All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today. We are going to get started and talk about all different ways that students find their community at UBC Engineering. So my name is Erin, and I am the Engineering Recruitment Officer at UBC Engineering on the Vancouver campus. I'd like to start by acknowledging that Vancouver is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Musqueam people. And again, thank you to everyone for joining us today. We are going to discuss a little bit more about finding your community during your first year at UBC. It's going to focus on kind of like clubs, teams, all of the amazing opportunities that you can participate in to meet new people and make friends in your time at UBC. So there were a lot of questions submitted in advance. We're going to get started with those, but you can all also use the chat to ask any questions that you have. So if you are on a computer at the bottom of your screen, you should see the chat box, and you can open that up and type in a chat. If you can put it to everyone and not just directly to me, that will just help make sure that we're seeing all those messages come in. If you're on a phone right now watching, you may need to tap your screen before you see the option to use the chat feature. But any questions that you have for our students about finding your community, getting involved, anything like that, feel free to add into the chat. All right, so I am joined by two students here today. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to get them both to introduce themselves so that you can hear from them. And then we'll, like I said, jump into some of those prepared questions that were sent in advance. And if you have any questions, add those to the chat. So Kenna, I will get you to introduce yourself first, if you could, please.
So hi guys, my name is Kene. I'm a final year chemical and biological engineering student at UBC, and I come from Nigeria, so really far away from Canada.
Awesome. And Sajida, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah, for sure. So hi, everyone. My name is Sajida. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm currently in my third year of integrated engineering in the Faculty of Applied Science at UBC. And I am originally from Burnaby, British Columbia, which is about a 40-minute ride away from the Vancouver campus.
Perfect. Thank you so much, both of you. So one of the first resources available to help to students to meet new people is Jumpstart and Imagine Day. So those are our orientations for students that are open to all incoming first-year students. If you are transferring, then you may just be attending Imagine Day and not Jumpstart. But those are some days that all of our students get to learn more about clubs, learn more about the faculty, learn more about UBC. So Kenna, can you start and just let me know kind of what your experience was like at any of our orientations, and if it helped with your transition to UBC at all?
Yeah, I still remember Jumpstart and Imagine Day as if it just happened. So I think when I came in Jumpstart, I started with Jumpstart, and over there they sort of just like there's a lot in your face to begin with, but it's so helpful. Basically, in terms of like I was living on residence, and there were residence advisors. Everyone was just out there waiting to help me settle in. They were also organizing like tours to like, the Bed Bath and Beyond. Like if you needed to get certain items, there were like banks and everything. Like representatives were coming to residents to help you set up a bank account and all the things you would need essentially to live in Canada and sort of set up, away from home. There was also like the Jumpstart orientation leaders who would essentially take you every day to go do some kind of activity with your group of other first-year students. And I think you would also have like a professor, and they sort of introduce you to UBC, everything that's great about UBC, exciting places to eat, great study spots. But they also sort of, while you're doing all that, you're also meeting new people. So you're getting to actually make your friend groups, whether it's with the people you're in the same Jumpstart orientation group with, or people outside of that orientation group. I know towards after the sort of Jumpstart orientation group, for the rest of the day, there's typically other activities to do. I know there used to be open mics, for instance, and then students would just go and have a good time and sort of meet each other and have, make new friends. So I think every day I met at least 10 new people. So yeah, that was really fun. And I think, when I was doing all this, I sort of set myself up to begin at UBC even before classes had actually begun. So we definitely recommend that to anyone coming in.
Awesome. And Sajida, can you remember all the way back to your orientations, and was there anything that stood out to you?
Yeah, I actually loved my Jumpstart. That was like 3 years ago, and it is one of my favorite memories still at UBC. I think the thing about Jumpstart is that it's a week before your classes start, which means that you have time to orient yourself to the campus and like get to know what's going on before having to worry about studying or classes or anything serious yet. And so I felt like it was a really good way of me moving into residence a couple days early and like getting to meet people on my floor. And I really felt like I found people to connect with through karaoke in the dining rooms, or little plant workshops that you can have, or like dance workshops where I met with people and I got to find people that were pursuing the same interests that I was. And I thought that was a really cool thing about Jumpstart. And I also liked the professor workshops that were available because you got to go and sit in a mock classroom-like environment and get to know somebody in your faculty. And it really helped me figure out exactly what university might look like for me in the coming months. And I thought it was a really good way of transitioning myself. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. So just a reminder, in case anyone new has joined us in the last few minutes, that you are welcome to use the chat to ask any questions that you have for Kene or Sajida. The next question I have is for Sajida. So UBC has so many great ways for students to get connected with other students, especially fellow engineers. So whether it be getting involved in Jumpstart, like we just mentioned, whether it's joining undergraduate societies or joining clubs and design teams. So I was just wondering if, Sajida, if you can talk a little bit more about what the main experiences you've had so far that have gotten you involved in the UBC engineering community or in the UBC community as a whole.
Yeah, I'd love to answer this question. So I'll tackle the UBC engineering first. I'm actually on 2 engineering design teams, and these design teams are actually open to not just engineering students, but students and anybody studying at UBC. One of the design teams I'm on is UBC Unmanned Aircraft Systems, and I've really felt like I've had a good community there because there are people like 4th years and 5th years who have all of this engineering knowledge, who have done all of the courses that I've already done. And I felt like they've really provided me a good mentoring opportunity. And also there's people my age as well. So you get to have some friends that you can hang out with. And I think like a typical Saturday in my life is I go to the Engineering Design Center, meet up with my team at 9:30 a.m. and go and work on our drones, figure out wiring circuits and like figure out building planes and things like that. And then at 4 p.m. we're done and we go out to eat together. And so I feel like it's a nice like balance of like professional and then also hanging out and feeling like these people are actually my friends. And so joining a design team is definitely a really good way of being a part of the UBC engineering community. And then on a grander scale of UBC in general, in my first year, I actually was a part of the UBC Bollywood dance team, the competitive Bollywood dance team. And this is called UBC Junoon. And so for me, ever since I was 3 years old, I was really, really into dance. And I was like, I'm coming to UBC. Will I even have time to dance? But in first year, I made that time. I was dancing around 12 hours a week with a group of 20 other students that were really interested in dance like me. And we actually traveled to Texas in March of my first year and brought back the 3rd place trophy for the competition. So it was just a lot of fun. And I think it goes to, and I actually even ended up writing about this when applying to my major for integrated engineering. And it goes to show that you are not forced to just get involved with the engineering community. The greater UBC community is really, really great as well. And so I recommend just like highlighting your diverse like interests, and that if you like dance, you can dance. If you like yoga or pottery or outdoors, there are clubs available in those aspects as well. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that amazing info on your experiences so far. It sounds like you've been involved in so much. Kene, I know that you've been involved in several clubs, design teams, you've been involved with research as well. So if you can also tell me a little bit more about what your experience has been like.
Okay, so we talked about Jumpstart earlier, and around that time, like when there's also Imagine Day, all these clubs, like they all come out to you and they just want to recruit you to come join their communities. And that's where I got to learn about the clubs and sort of opportunities that I would sort of take advantage of later. So I joined the design team in my second year, and it was a chemical engineering design team. And funny enough, we used thermodynamics, fluid mechanics, and all of that to brew beer. So it was less about the beer, but more about using process control and all that was needed to do that, to actually develop like a food product that people could like consume if they wanted to. So that's a whole big topic when it comes to the food industry. So it was a nice thing I had on my under my sleeves to talk about with people in a professional setting. And what's interesting is I was in that team, I met a graduate student who I ended up starting my first research placement with, and we worked on some vaccine platform that this is way before COVID, but we worked on a platform that would reduce the cost of vaccines. And funny enough, through the professor I worked with, I got into my current research position. So that just shows you how the community at UBC, like it's worth investing in. It's worth actually talking to people you meet every day and investing in those relationships. I think what was also so interesting about it is that beyond the professional or like the academic area, there is also a lot of you shouldn't knock down the sort of opportunities to actually meet people outside of engineering, as Sajida was saying. So for instance, I joined the UBC rowing team for a while. And this was actually a great topic when I was discussing with one professor I wanted to work with, because he was on the Canadian rowing team. So he had gone to the Olympics. And when he saw I was on the rowing team, he was just so excited to speak to me. Funny enough, this was the first company I did my internship at. Their sort of motto was row together. So that was something I talked about in my interview. I was like, I love your mission statement, because I literally know how to row, and I've been rowing for the past year. So I would say all these experiences, it's funny how they've just sort of come together to sort of lead to the opportunities I've had and I will have in the future. So yeah, definitely look into the communities at UBC. There are a lot of places it could lead you to, a lot of experiences you could have just by exploring your curiosity.
Awesome, thank you. The next question that we have in the chat was actually going to be the next question I was going to ask Sajida anyway. So asking more about how it is to connect with others in your classes. So at UBC Engineering, you'll have lectures, which are going to be probably in first year around 200 people in your lecture. In all of those classes that you have lectures, you're also going to have smaller components that are going to be a tutorial or a lab or a studio or something like that. So there are some smaller classes as well. But Sajida, if you can talk a little bit more about different ways how you've met people in your classes so that you can study with them or make friends with them and things like that.
Yeah, this is a really great question. I think UBC Engineering is set up in a way where they're trying to help first years make friends. And that's because all of us are in a standard timetable. So you will end up seeing the same type of faces or like similar faces in those 200 class lecture halls. So for me, it would be like, I would go to my first physics class, all 200 of us would be there, and then we would all shift to our math class. And so it was like a big school bus all around campus, which I really appreciated because I was able to like work up the courage to just talk to the people right beside me. I think you tend to sit in the same area in class, and then the same people are kind of around you. And I think the best way to make those connections is just to reach out and just be like, hey, do you understand what's going on in the class right now? Or, hey, I see that you're like listening to Taylor Swift. I'm into Taylor Swift too. And I think just finding those commonalities with the people who are studying engineering around you is a really great way of making those friendships and those connections. And outside of that, I found that when I got involved in clubs, like as Kene was mentioning, I found that in those clubs, there would be one or two engineering students. And then all of a sudden we formed that bond because we're both in engineering and then we're in this club as well together. And so you have something more in common, and then you start reaching out to each other like, hey, do you want to work on the chemistry homework together? Or do you want to go to the beach and, relax and chill and watch the sunset? And I think it's really about putting yourself out there and reaching out, because I think everybody is there and everybody wants to say yes. And some people just don't have the courage to ask and say, hey, let's get lunch, or hey, let's meet up after class type of thing. And I think that's the best way to make those friendships, find commonalities, and just reach out. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. So there is another question that is going to be different for every sort of team and club, but a question of, do teams and clubs have commitment requirements? So like a minimum amount of hours per week. Kenna, if you want to jump in, if you want to kind of mention a little bit about that, of what that looks like for anything that you've been involved in, and then, yeah, we can go from there.
Yeah, I think the clubs, oftentimes they try to be explicit in the kind of commitments they would like people to be able to commit to. So I think this is where sort of time management comes in, to sort of say, okay, I know my schedule looks like this. That said, I do understand a lot of people will be coming into first year, and the teams know that too. So this is something that teams, like, typically they would help work with you to sort of say, okay, maybe school is getting a bit, maybe you have some midterms and exams, that kind of thing. What I found is that my team captain was always like, okay, Kene, we know you have that and you're sort of adjusting to UBC and everything. So, okay, how about maybe you don't need to come in for Wednesday's session. Maybe we'll meet on Saturday, that kind of thing. And even sometimes there's also like how they divide tasks so that you can do some tasks on your own, not necessarily within the team at certain times, or like when the team usually meets up. So I think it's something you would discuss with the team, but what I'm trying to pass across is there is the opportunity for flexibility, for mentorship, especially from the older students who have been through or are going through. So you may actually find that the homework you're struggling with, there is someone there who, like, he can basically guide you through how to go about it and sort of help you out.
Awesome, thank you. And maybe jumping in even a little bit further, Sajida, can you talk a little bit about how you've developed time management skills? So you're involved in so much and with school and everything like that. How do you kind of manage keeping track of school and all of your other commitments?
Yeah, I'd love to answer this question. I think first and foremost, it's very different for each person and what your capabilities are. I think for me, in first year, I was overwhelmed. And then as the months went on, I was able to learn how to properly manage my time. So currently what I do is Google Calendar is my best friend. I put in all of my commitments. So all of my classes, all of my clubs, all of my regular meetings, I put it all in, and then I can see what spaces are blank to see what kind of free time I have and if I can allocate that to something else. So if all of a sudden there's a club or an opportunity that interests me, I can look at my calendar and see if it's a possibility to add that on my plate, or if it seems like I'm too full for this week, or so on. And I think at that point where you have a couple of commitments on your plate, you kind of need to figure out which one is the most important to you. So does your design team mean more to you than your English class, for example? Or does your math class mean more to you than going to some sort of social gathering on the Friday? And I think it's really about balancing the triangle of S's, which is sleep, social, and study. And I'm constantly having to figure out which one is going to be put over the other today and which one is going to be put over tomorrow. And I think the best way to handle that is to alternate. So don't always choose sleep, don't always choose study, don't always choose social. Kind of continue to see what feels the best for you and go with that. And recently I've been spending more time with my friends, and I've found that it's helped me stay more involved in academics because I'm having fun on the side as well. And I think it's really important to prioritize your health and your social well-being along with your academic well-being. And I think that's been really helpful for me. Yeah.
Awesome. That's so great to hear. And I do also want to add that there are a lot of supports available in your first year. So even in your classes, we have a really great advising team. Engineering Academic Services has academic advisors. So if you ever do feel like you are struggling managing things, there are people to reach out to. You do not need to find it all on your own, but even talking to students and talking to upper year students or talking to other students in your classes of how they're kind of managing things can also help. We have a channel called Engineering Stories if you haven't seen it before, but it's talking about like day in the life of some of our students, and they have a few videos on there as well about time management to kind of get some ideas of what might work for you. So I can link that as well. So I do also want to mention that coming into first year, we do recommend that first year students try to get involved in some activities, but also not to overwhelm yourself, because it is going to be more difficult probably than what you were used to in high school in terms of academics. So we do recommend that you kind of plan to only get involved in 2 main like recurring activities kind of thing at the start, and then you can always that'll still leave you time to participate in like one-off events. So UBC has some great events like Day of the Longboat. This past weekend, we had Storm the Wall, which is like a triathlon, but at the end of it, you have to climb over this giant wall with your team and things like that. So there's all these other events happening as well. And so we do want to make sure that you have enough time in your schedule that you can still do those sort of one-off events, but still have enough time to do well in your classes and things like that. So thank you both for all of that great advice. We have a little less than 10 minutes before we're going to wrap up today. So if you do have any other questions about getting involved or about finding your community or making friends on campus or anything like that, please do add that into the chat so we can answer those questions. I do want to ask Kene if you have any other kind of recommendations of what your favorite way for meeting new people on campus has been in your degree so far.
I would say shared interests, really, because I find when there's something we share already, I find I'm less nervous. So because I already know something is already known, and maybe the person I'm about to meet is, if you like, the unknown. But so I found that having a shared interest was helpful for me. So like something like just exercise or fitness, that got me on the rowing team, for instance, and I was able to sort of connect with people about rowing, but any other sport. Something like pharmaceuticals, that got me into research, and I was just able to talk more with the people there. That said, I would also say there is a place for how unknowns can actually help you get make new friends, in the sense both of you are trying something you've never done before, and it's like, oh, I have no clue what's going on here. And honestly, that was my first year physics class. I got in there and they were like, make this circuit, and I was like what circuit, like how to and it was interesting to find I wasn't the only person thinking that. So I still have friends from first year, and how we became friends was we were just messing around with those circuits to see what works, like where does the capacitor go, like, never seen this before. So there is definitely a place for the unknowns, and how that can also help you sort of create those friendships.
Awesome, thank you. All right, so I'm going to move on to one piece that I ask in all of these live Q&As. So I always like to know what sort of piece of advice you would share with your grade 12 self. So if you were thinking back, several years ago, coming into UBC Engineering, what sort of advice would you have given yourself back then? So Kene, do you want to go first?
There's several things I would have told myself. I think sometimes I can be a bit conservative, essentially don't limit yourself and what you think you can do. I would always say, stretch. I think when I was, for instance, on the sports teams, we would just stretch ourselves so much, and I found that really gave me the mentality that I can actually do anything I set my mind to. So it was, rather as waking up early hours, I was like, wow, I can wake up at 5 to go run in the rain. What? I didn't think that was possible then. But how that translated to my studies was that, they gave me a difficult problem, and I'm like, okay, like solving a problem that's really just the same steps all the time. So let's do that, do those steps, and surely we should have a good, reasonable answer at the end of it. So I would say, don't limit yourself. And maybe just one last one is really explore your curiosity. I would say that's like why UBC is here. Like, don't think you need to stay on the beaten path. Don't think you need to even there are design teams here, but if something is really interesting to you, you could find out how to make a design team. UBC is really yours to explore.
Awesome, thank you, Kene. And Sajida, what advice would you have given yourself back in grade 12?
Yeah, I have lots of advice. I think one big thing that I would say is maybe make like a list of what you're looking for out of university. For me, I came into first year and then all of a sudden it felt like a whirlwind, and I sometimes didn't really have much time to think. And I think if I had written down like, okay, this is really important to me, this is what I want out of my university experience, then you can always refer back to that sheet. Like, do you want to join a club? Do you want to pursue dance? Do you want to do a minor? Do academics mean a lot to you? Like, write those pieces down so that you can constantly refer back to it when you're feeling a little bit stuck or unsure why you're even in engineering, because everybody goes through that phase at some point. And I think it's nice to see, like, why did you choose this? Where are you coming from? And having a document to look back on that. And my other piece of advice is talk to people, talk to your professors, especially. They are such knowledgeable people. They are so, so cool. And I think starting to build relationships with your professors early on really helps you later in your degree, because you have people to send an email to if you have questions about what to do with your future career, or if you need a reference letter for something. I think building those connections is really important. And outside of that, also talk to classmates, talk to upper years, because those upper years have been there, done that, and they're able to provide a lot of the advice that me and Kene are providing right now. And I think it's really about talking to people, and also about just honing in on what your goals are and what you want to get out of your experience at UBC. UBC's motto is Tum Est, which means it is yours. So really, it's in your own hands.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for joining today. We do have a couple of minutes. If anyone does have any last question that they want to ask using the chat, we can answer that today. I do also want to mention that if you would like to continue chatting to some of our current students, we have a great platform that I will put in the chat right now. So there's a link to that you can see some FAQs that they've answered for us this year. You can also start a chat with our students to learn more about them. We have tons of students that are involved in different types of clubs and sports and design teams and co-op and things like that. So if you want to learn more, you can always get connected with our current UBC Engineering Ambassador team there. And Ruby asked, is there a page with all of the clubs and teams listed? There is a couple of spots for that. So when we do talk about clubs, there are the kind of campus-wide clubs that are for all students. So let me get the link for that. So our clubs are called the AMS clubs. The AMS stands for the Alma Mater Society, which is really just the campus-wide student government, essentially. And so we have over 350 clubs across campus that students can get involved with. The one thing I don't think we touched on too much is that there are kind of club fair days that happen right at the beginning of the school year. And part of Imagine Day is that there is a day of clubs that you can walk down Main Mall, which is basically the kind of pedestrian walkway that goes clear across campus. And you'll see all of these clubs out on campus, and you can talk to them and learn more about them. And usually they'll have a sign-up sheet. You can put your email down and they'll send you an email with more information. Sajida just linked the link for the design teams. So you can see all of the teams listed there. We have over 30 design teams available. And if you want to talk with some of those design teams at our UBC Engineering applicant event coming up next Tuesday evening, we are going to have several of our teams there that you can chat with and learn more about those teams and what they do. So that's a great thing to attend. I'll get the link for that as well. But the design teams and clubs will be out there on Clubs Day, and that's really a great way to kind of get connected with all of them. A lot of our clubs and teams have social media as well, and they're happy to connect with students over social media. So if you want to follow them on Instagram or on Facebook, I don't know if any of them have TikTok. I'm sure some of them do. I don't know them off the top of my head, but if you want to get connected with them, there are lots of ways to do that. And I will just put in the applicants event registration in the chat so that you can access that if you haven't had a chance to register for that event yet. That brings us to the end of our session. So thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you so much to Kene and Sajida for being here. Thank you for spending your Tuesday evening kind of right towards the end of classes. Things are wrapping up. I know they're both working on, Sajida just finished her capstone project, she said today, or presented it at least, and Kene's is coming up later this week. So lots of things happening. But thank you both so much for spending some time to chat with our UBC Engineering applicants. I hope everyone that attended got to learn a little bit more about ways to get involved. So thank you all very much. This recording will be sent out in the next few days, so you can expect an email with a link to that. And otherwise, if you have any questions at any point in time, you're always welcome to send me an email at erin.fair@ubc.ca. So thank you all so much. Have a great evening. And if you're in Vancouver, it just got sunny out for me. So enjoy the sunshine, or wherever you are, have a great evening. Thank you.